became a vegan, there was issues of consent.
You consume less plants, so you contribute to less suffering. So even if plants feel pain, which I would argue they do not, but if they do, you would eat less plants, and therefore you would cause less suffering.
So we can eat less meat. I agree with you there.
Would you not want to reduce the suffering in this world?
Yes. So eat less meat.
We agree with that. And the way to reduce suffering in this world is by being
ethical farming. Eat less meat.
There is effort. There
I agree with you. So really, you're not really a vegan. You're thinking like a Muslim at this minute. I'll tell you why. A Muslim doesn't want unwanted suffering to any living thing. When we consume meat, do you know how we make it permissible to us? We can't just, kill a chicken or kill a cow or something to eat, for example. This life, we have to take it with the permission of God, only for the consumption of eating it.
You don't have to eat
it. For playing games that people play, like, the English tradition of foxes and rabbits or hares, right? It will totally disallowed and not allowed in Islam, because you are killing an animal for fun. In Islam, do you know how...
Why do you eat meat? Why do you eat meat?
I'll tell you why. Why does a lion eat a deer?
You're not a lion. I'm asking you.
No, I will tell you, just to give you the picture of the natural world.
But you're not in the natural world. But you're not in the natural world.
Am I not part of the natural world?
This is not natural. There's cameras here.
Wait.
Megaphone.
Am I living in an artificial world, or am I part of a natural world?
You're not running around naked, are you? You're not living in the natural world. You're living in a society with rules and concepts. The natural world is, if I'm bigger, I have the rights. That is, might is right in the natural world. That is not the case in this world. There are laws. There are judgments. You cannot take from another. There are dignities. There are respect. You are given rights.
Yes.
That is not natural.
Right.
That is not the way animals live. That is not the way beings without moral ability live, okay? But what I'm saying is, would you not want to reduce the suffering? Yes,
Did I tell you already?
And therefore, you should go vegan.
I told you already, you are speaking like a Muslim in the sense that there should be minimum suffering for
that's beautiful.
all living
Then we agree.
creatures.
Then we agree.
Yes, we do. So you don't have to be a vegan. What you need to be, become a Muslim. And when you become a Muslim, I'll tell you, once you become a Muslim...
I would disagree with that, but go on.
When you say you disagree, this whole world, right?
Yeah.
You need to really understand your position in this world too. Okay. Not in relation to animals only, right? Yeah. Do you believe this world is a product of a creator?
No.
Right.
I don't believe in
so basically, your ideological stance has made you to think and accept veganism.
I believe in evidence-based decision-making.
Very good. I believe in that too.
I knew you were going to say
right. What are the evidence that this universe came from nothing? Is there any evidence?
The universe didn't come from nothing.
So the universe...
No one has ever said the universe comes from nothing.
A lot of people say that.
No, they don't. So they say it comes from a very dense...
Okay, so then it expanded
very, very quickly, and the universe we are in is expanding.
You know what? I agree with you. Then why would world-famous scientists and physicists like Professor Lawrence Krauss write a book called The Universe from Nothing and sell it and become the bestseller? And his fans digest it and they believe the universe came from nothing.
But they may do that, but I don't believe that.
Right.
I would say the general scientific community does not say the universe comes from nothing.
Right.
There is not that consensus.
So
is not the case.
So is the universe?
Consensus is it comes from a very dense piece of matter, etc. It was very dense, and then something we don't know what it was. There is no consensus on that. It expanded extremely quickly, and that is the universe we're living in, and it is expanding. And there's evidence.
How old is our universe according to science?
It is
roughly
billions or trillions of years old.
About 13.67 billion years, right?
It's extremely old.
Right. So 13.6, say 14, round number.
Yeah.
14 billion years is nothing compared to eternal universe. If a universe is eternal, it's more than trillions and trillions of years.
But they don't say the universe is that. They're not saying it's that old.
What
they're saying since the start of the Big Bang. That is the period of time since the start of the Big Bang. They're not saying that the concept is it is eternal.
No, their concept is our universe
But here's the thing, right?
Our universe is only 13.7 billion years old. That means there was no before that.
Okay.
So,
well, I disagree with that, but...
you disagree with
Here's the thing.
On what evidence do you disagree with these scientists?
Logically, God can exist and the Big Bang can exist as one. You can believe in a God and you can believe in the Big Bang. You can say that the way that the religious texts speak are descriptive and they're not literal and they're describing that process. You can argue that. But what I would say is I don't see any evidence for God. I don't see any evidence for God, and I don't see any evidence for there not being God. I can't prove a negative. And you're asking me to prove a negative, and that's not physically possible.
Yeah,
I cannot prove that doesn't exist.
Of course, we prove negative all the time.
What I can do is prove that a particular type of God exists. But I do not fully understand.
Okay, let's go through these
Islam, and I don't fully understand. So I wouldn't be able to prove to you that Islamic God doesn't exist. I agree with you, but I would say in my day-to-day life, I see suffering. And to me, if I was God, I would argue, and God is meant to be kind. Is that correct?
And just.
He's just.
And wise.
But is a child being born with a disease who is suffering from birth, is that just? I would argue that is not just. A child being born without any decision making,
let's think about this.
ever making any moral decision, is in suffering. I would say that's not just.
So your
no one should suffer without reason, without cause or justice.
Right.
That is what justice is. Justice is an act and a consequence of that act. That is not the case for a child born with a disease.
Sure.
That is not the case for someone starving.
So let's deal with one by one, right? Okay. Let's deal with the first thing, child suffering. Give me an example of this suffering. What is the child suffering from? Cancer?
I don't think a child can be born with cancer, but I could be born. There are children born with severe disabilities.
Fine, disabilities. Do you know that many of the things could be because of what we do as parents? What we have done to our environment? Why we have done all this external stimulus all around us, and then they make the baby deform in our womb?
Do you have a family? I'm responding to your question, so I'm asking you, do you have a family?
I have a family, but let me move on.
If you did something wrong, say you came up and slapped me, yeah? That I would agree that's wrong, yeah? And instead of you suffering, your children suffered. That's not just. You should feel the consequences of your action, not your children.
Let's take that.
That's not just.
It's not just in your thinking, perhaps. I'll tell you why the thinking is quite out of place. When we know that if someone drinks alcohol in large quantities while she is pregnant, we know the child's going to develop fetal alcoholic syndrome.
That is correct.
Yeah, we know that.
That's correct.
So then you're saying this woman, the mother, the pregnant woman, should suffer, not the baby. But we know that the consequence is going to pass on to the baby.
But that is wrong. That is not just.
Wait. You can't just say, oh, because the child suffers, the child is made to suffer because of the actions of someone else. For example,
that sound just?
For example,
does a child suffering because of someone else's actions without any consent? The child does not consent. The child has no decision in that. The child did not say, "Mother, can you drink alcohol?" No, because it was in the womb.
Just relax.
Why is a child being punished like that? Why is a child being treated in such an awful manner because of another person's actions? That is not just. Justice.
Did you consent to global warming? Did you consent to air pollution, water pollution? Did you consent to all this harmful X-rays and rays that's coming and causing you cancer? Did you consent to any of that?
Firstly,
for example, here.
Are you going to let me respond to your question?
Yeah, please do. Okay. Did you consent to any of that?
I would firstly say, regarding climate change and anthropogenic climate change, I am part of that.
Did you consent to it?
Yes, because by being part of that, by getting on the train today, I contributed to greater greenhouse gas emissions.
Nope.
By me, yes, I did. By
what is consent?
I purchased these
Let's
clothes
understand from the very root.
I contributed to greenhouse gas emissions.
What is consent?
By using oil, I contribute to greenhouse gas emissions. I am consenting because I am part of that action.
What is consent?
When it comes to cancer, I'm not consenting to that. I'm not consenting to cancer, but I don't have a choice because I live in a...
look at that. I don't have a choice. That's the difference between consent and not having a choice.
But no one here thinks cancer is just.
Finally.
No one here...
Sorry.
Okay, anyone watching, who thinks cancer is just? No one thinks cancer is just.
You know what you're doing?
Because
you're shifting the discussion. Instead of now talking about consent, you're now going to justice. Let's understand consent first. All of the things that you mentioned, ultimately what you're admitting now, I had no choice. I am being forced to live in a system like that. So you did not consent to it, You're forced onto it.
I do not consent to the ability for me to get cancer. But here's the
Sorry,
thing.
sorry.
I was born
I'm not
as an
talking about
organic
cancer.
organism. I was born as an organic
I don't
organism.
see
in
why.
biology. And that's how we know evolution is real. Because it doesn't work very well. It works reasonably well, but we have issues with it because it's come from different
rays that comes from the sun or from our universe up there.
But I'm not saying that's just. I'm saying that is not just.
Sorry. You can't just make it into a just thing only without looking at the system. So now you have ozone layer being hole created in it, and harmful.
Human action.
It's the humans doing it, of course.
Yeah.
Did you consent to that? Did I consent to it? No, I didn't. I was forced into it. I had
But collectively, we
sorry,
did.
Sorry,
That collective
sorry,
action of using aerosols.
Sorry, now you are now totally changing the meaning of the word consent. So now, for example, if a woman is raped because man overpowered her and she had no choice.
That's not the case.
Excuse me. Let's understand consent. If a woman is being raped by various pervert individuals and they overpower her and she has no choice into that because she's been forced, is that her passive consent to this?
That's not consent.
Is this a passive consent?
She is not consenting.
Is this a passive consent? Not an active one. Is this a passive consent?
No, it's not.
Good. So if I am being bombarded with all this harmful rays and pollutions all over, am I consenting to this?
Okay, so
Or am I being forced into it?
when we figure consent,
Do I have a choice or am I consenting?
can I talk?
That's the whole idea.
Okay. When we consider consent, it generally involves multiple people who have the ability to make decisions. We do not consider consent in the circumstances where people don't have the decision process. They don't have control over that. There is no responsibility. When we have consent, there is responsibility and there are consequences to our actions. That is what consent is. That's what we're involved in when it comes to consenting. Yeah? So, whereas someone can consent to sex, we don't consent to a catastrophic climate event. We don't consent to that. However, collectively, for certain catastrophic events, collectively, we have knowingly contributed to that. That is just how the world
There's a huge
works.
difference between knowingly being part of the system and actively consenting.
Sorry, I've got to take a phone call. It just keeps coming through.
You have to be a little bit away if you're going to speak because all cameras going to... Yeah, that's fine. Right. So, what we're saying is, we haven't consented for any of this. We had no choice. The baby didn't consent to it. If the baby had the power to consent, I'm sure the baby will say, don't drink alcohol, mum, because it's going to harm me.
I agree.
But the baby isn't consenting because
100%,
firstly,
we're in agreement. The baby does not
So
consent.
don't bring now the whole thing about the baby is suffering.
The baby's not consenting to that. That is correct. But what I
the
was
baby
saying
is
was
suffering
a
because of
just
what?
System, something that is just is where you do an action and the consequences of your action are felt upon yourself. That is a just system, yeah?
Exactly.
Where you consent, you're consenting to something. I say, if I'm going to go up to someone and swear in their face, I am consenting to their response, whatever that be, because I've taken that action and I'm responsible for whatever they do. Because I've caused that reaction. A baby has not done that. A baby who was born to a mother had no control over that.
That's what we're saying.
And that is not just. Would a God, someone who's kind, someone who's compassionate, would they create a system where someone who has no choice, who has no ability to consent, who has no responsibility for their action, should feel a serious consequence of
Let's go back to the system.
Well, I would say no, that is not a just system.
Okay, let's understand justice.
Let's
Justice. If there is no unjust action, would you understand what just is? If there is no suffering and pain and evil, would you know what good and happiness and bliss and enjoyment is? Would you?
Is God all powerful?
Sorry. Don't now jump to justice.
To answer your question,
No.
You asked me, do I need relativity to know something?
Firstly, if there was no darkness whatsoever, would you know what light is? Would you even appreciate what light is? Would you? If there was no pain whatsoever, would you not appreciate what happiness and joy is? Would you?
Can you let me respond without interrupting? Okay.
Or if you only respond to the question that I ask.
And to do that, I need to ask you another question.
No. You answer the way you like rather than asking me another question.
All right, then that's fair enough. Okay, what I would say is, we have this system. This is a natural system that it has lots of issues with it. If a God existed, he would, and a God is all powerful. I would argue that if I believed in a God, and I believe this, I could be wrong here, but Islamic God, is he all-powerful? I think he is. And therefore, if he is all-powerful, if he can do whatever he wants, or I'm assuming it's gender there, if they can do whatever they want, then I'm sure they could create a system where you do not need relativity to understand something. I don't think it's a big deal. But we live in this system, and therefore...
You've answered your own question. Perhaps you haven't realized this. If a creator is all-powerful, is the creator able to create with his wisdom systems where people have this relativity to understand and appreciate more?
We do not need to suffer.
No, it's not. You don't need to
God
suffer.
should be able to. If he's all powerful, he should be able to.
The creator doesn't want you to suffer.
Suffering doesn't exist.
No.
I'm sorry, but that's simply the fact. But here's the thing: because we live in a natural universe that is not created by some individual, because it's a reaction and over time, over millennium, little things have big impacts.
Do you want
we have
the
this
creator?
weird system which doesn't always work.
This
is why we have tailbones. We have tailbones because we evolved from a monkey with a tail.
Oh, now you're bringing evolution in.
Because it doesn't work. If there was a God, he would have created a system where we wouldn't have tailbones, and therefore we wouldn't have issues.
Now you're resorting to
appendicitis.
Evolution.
We need an appendix. We don't use an appendix. An appendix is a leftover from an evolutionary forefather of us. If a God was created that, we wouldn't need to have an appendix.
I work in a hospital.
Okay, that's cool.
Right? Do you know what an appendix does to our body? You just made a statement. It's a vestigial organ. Now that was the belief.
No role.
That was the belief.
It has no role.
That was the belief about vestigial organs.
Yep.
Like in the Middle Ages, that's how far. I'm not saying Middle Ages in the 14th century, in the early 19th century. They had a list of vestigial organs.
Okay, yeah.
I encourage strongly to everyone who's listening to go and research about vestigial organs, starting from the very first list that was created or generated in the early 19th century. And look at the list. Is the list of vestigial organs means redundant organs in your body. The organs or things in your body that has no purpose. We call them leftover of evolutionary byproducts or whatever, right? Search and do research. Are these lists getting bigger and bigger? Like the more and more part of our body is useless? Or it's getting smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller? One thing I can tell you right now, the list is getting smaller and smaller. Why? Because as our science and technology develops, we learn more and more about the function of those things. Appendix was once considered to be a vestigial organ, once considered by our scientists who believed in evolution. But the same scientists will now say, of course, appendix has a major role to play. I'm not going to tell you what role is because I want you to do the homework. When I first checked decades ago, so it wasn't actually new information, decades ago, in Scientific American, Ask the Experts, because I used to read Scientific American. There's two new science magazines I used to read during university years. New Scientist and Scientific American. Scientific American had Asked the Experts, and there someone did pose that question. What is the role of the appendix? More than 2 professional scientists in their field answer that question. What role the appendix plays. So today, you would not find, as far as I know, a biology textbook which has this myth, appendix has no role to play. Right, so this is your answer to about vestigial organs. Coming back, look, in Islam, Allah tells us that ظهر الفساد في البر والبحر. The corruption has occurred in the land and the sea. Why? Because what their hands have earned. So Allah can, make them feel some of their own chastisement, what they have done with their own hands. Also Allah says that He will test people with something of fear, hunger, loss of life, loss of property, and so on and so forth. So this is part of the wisdom of God creating this life. This life, God that we believe in, a just God, did not create this as paradise, in which there is no suffering. I can see. I know, but I want to quickly answer this. You will go then. I'm not going to take minutes. Maybe a few minutes. This life is not life utopia created by God. It is a transitionary period in which we will be tested in what we believe and what we do.
I understand your position.
And
the thing is,
when we end up in a destination, there will be a place of happiness when there will be no suffering. So God created for this wisdom from God.
Relativity. We
God
need
has created
relativity
this.
to understand the good and the bad.
Do you know why there's good and the bad? But at least this point,
Okay.
we have been given freedom of choice,
Yeah,
free will.
We have been given
Free will means some people will use it wisely and some people would not.
100%.
Those who would not, they will create suffering. They will do evil. If they were unable to do evil, then they have no free will.
Okay.
Because of the provision of free will, their suffering does exist.
I do understand your position, and I'll be honest, I have heard it before, and I understand the logic of relativity. I would disagree with that, but obviously I've got to go. But what I think we both share is the fact that we both agreed earlier that we should try and live our lives respecting others, reducing the suffering that our lives have on others. And I think whether you're Islamic, whether you're vegan, or whether you're even Christian or whatever, as long as
not just animal life, right? Human life too.
Well, I consider us all animals, so I agree.
Yeah.
As long as we respect
people
everyone
in Palestine,
else,
people in China, people in
100%.
Kashmir, wherever people are suffering, irrespective
100%.
of their language, of their color, of their race, of their religion.
We all feel. We are all individuals who feel emotions, who feel pain, and we all deserve respect for that through our individualism and our pain and our suffering. And I think if you do that through Islam, and if I do that through veganism, then I would hope that if there is a God, and I know you believe in no God, and if I
wish we could continue, but you have to go.
I understand that, but I think we both have a very similar outlook, but we've come to the same conclusion on a lot of things from a different route. And I think that's really a really beautiful thing of life, that we can come to the same conclusion, but from very different journeys.
It's just a matter of how we take that journey. If you consider Islam and research into it, you will see that all your noble things that you've just said, you will agree that Islam is aspiring and encouraging to do the same.
I'll make you a deal. I'll look into Islam if you look into veganism.
Yeah, I have.
Okay. I assume you use it for a YouTube channel or something, is it?
There are lots of YouTube channels. You can ask them which channels they are.
Okay, because I didn't know if you were part of it or not. But...
Oh, people just record. You come here and people record it.
Okay. I want to look it up. I want to see.
Okay. You can tell him which channels you're recording to, so he can reflect back.